Welcome to Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living. Join me, Chris.
And me, Jacqueline, for real conversations about life, death, and everything in between.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and heal, how to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Through healthy conversations between the feminine and masculine, you learn how to harness the power of relationship and the mirror to befriend your shadow and to trust that any obstacle that gets in your way is there to help you grow.
Together, working at a practical level, you learn to trust that everything that is happening is for you, your growth, and ultimate freedom.
Our circumstances don't matter. It's only how we relate to them that does.
Get ready to befriend the wisdom of your body and the power of your mind.
Break Free and Trust starts now.
Welcome to Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living. I'm Chris.
And I'm Jacqueline.
And in today's show, Jacqueline and I are going to explore the topic of secrets, lies, and honesty, and the roles that these concepts have played in our lives, as well as the people we work with. Like most things in our lives, there are aspects that operate above the surface of our awareness and those that operate below. They influence the way we choose to act, the masks we may unwittingly be wearing, as well as the general level of peace in our life. There's something in this episode for everyone, so settle in. Okay, I was trying to think of a really good way to start on this. And maybe I'll begin with this, and we're going to see where it takes us. So, Jacqueline, there's a popular saying out there that we are only as sick as our secrets. What does that mean to you?
Well, it's a big question, huh? The first thing that comes to me when you ask me that question is we're only as sick as the secrets we keep from ourselves. You're going to ask me what I mean by that.
What do you mean by that? You know what's coming.
I think that inherently we all have blind spots, our shadows, really, that we're unwilling to really look at or own. And they actually become the lies that we tell ourselves to protect ourselves from having to look inside and feel. And we build whole lives around these secrets. And they're the very thing that keeps us from accessing our full vitality. And actually, I think that they are often the biggest causes of dis-ease in our life. That's my answer.
Okay. Can you give an example? Give an example of a lie. Just maybe a lot of people can connect to it, but an example of what a lie we would tell to ourselves. Because everyone's aware of the lie we tell to other people. It's sort of an obvious thing. What's a lie we tell to ourselves?
You know, I'm gonna give a big one because it's the one that comes up when you first ask the question. But so for me in my life, the lie that I told myself for a very long time was that I was happy in my marriage. And how that made itself manifest from a physical standpoint was, I had so much throat stuff going on, I wasn't actually speaking my truth. Things that were having me tested for thyroid issues and all kinds of things, when you could visibly see, as I mentioned in one of our other podcasts, swelling in my neck. Doctors could see it, but no tests could actually show anything from it, which then led me back to sort of the energetics of what's actually happening there. And in truth, where I was with that was, everything that I had told myself about what it meant to be a good person was to stand, to work hard, to make things work, to stick by your person, to do all of these things. But what was under that was, if I don't, then am I lovable? Am I worthy? Am I a good person? And therein lies the lies I told myself, which were that in order to be worthy, to be a good person, to be of value, to be accepted, to be embraced, I needed to work hard. I needed to violate my own boundaries. I needed to show up when my body and everything in me told me to leave.
And so you're literally, this example is literal. You're talking about the lie you told yourself is physically making you sick, not just mentally and emotionally, but physically in this case.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You said something else interesting there too, which is the way I've thought about it as well. It's like if I take it down to its foundations, um, we lie to survive.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right. It's like we want to conform, we want to fit in, we want to be accepted because one of our prime survival needs is to be included in the tribe. And it goes back a long time. If you weren't included in the tribe and you're excluded, you're going to die. You can't survive on your own. That's sort of that's our historic past. So it's like we're going to say what needs to be said externally, but to ourselves to try to make it and conform to this group. So I belong here.
And it is a survival need. It's the survival need of a child because as a child, we actually do depend on our mother, our father for our survival, right? A significant adult in our lives. We absolutely depend on them for our survival. And the threat of losing them puts us in a place where we do risk our lives. And so it's, yes, it's 100% natural for us to come up with the persona that will be accepted by the other. The challenge is it lives with us for our entire life or until we get to a place where that can't happen anymore because we'll break, right? And so you said this that we are designed in some ways to belong to a tribe or to want to be a part of. And I think what happens as we move through our lives is that these lies that we tell ourselves, which start out for our survival, but then become our habits and they become our personality, right? We're looking externally to belong to something else. And up that works up to a point until our reference point actually is no longer about looking outward, but actually becomes about belonging to ourselves. Because, in my estimation, anyways, we all get to this place in our lives. For some, it's at midlife. For some, it's much earlier. And for some, it's a lot later, where we get to a place where everything that we've been doing breaks down. And actually, our drive becomes no longer about belonging to the other, but about belonging to self.
Right. And I want to back up and I want to come back to that place about this place we get to where it doesn't work for us anymore, and this thing where we start to lose ourselves and need to look internally. And I heard what you said was like we're effectively, maybe I'll paraphrase it, we're born in truth in a sense. We don't have any lies or any secrets. We're just pure. And to fit into whatever family or community, we start seeing the mask we may need to wear in order to belong. And it sounds like it's very contingent on what type of family I'm in, what type of community, what type of place am I growing up in is going to dictate the type of mask or persona or ego I need to develop to survive. It's a pure survival instinct. And this example came to mind that there could be one child that grows up in a household where it's expected that they're polite, they're on time, they get good marks, they do all these other things and achieve, and that's the mask or the persona they're going to take on. There could be someone else who grows up in a very, very tough neighborhood where it's all about being tough and stoic, not showing emotions and being a good fighter. There's an entirely different type of masks. Both these two individuals were born the same way, but they both actually adopted this mask, which is effectively just a persona and various secrets or lies they're telling themselves to survive their childhood and get into adulthood now thinking, well, this is who I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you know what I think is really interesting about what you just said is that we all wear masks.
Of course.
And my masks talk to your masks and your masks talk to my masks. And then we have this deep need to be seen, to be heard, to be understood. And it's almost impossible for that to be so when we're relating to each other with our masks on. But one thing that came out of what you just spoke that really struck me is, yes, we all grow up in different circumstances, and our circumstances require us to put on different masks to survive. And what would happen if we all sort of stepped out of judgment and actually into this place of compassion, recognizing that we all actually just show up doing the best we can every day. Like, nobody shows up in the morning and decides, I'm going to be less than I can be today. We're all doing our best with what we've got. And if we were able to compassionately meet each other and recognize that each one of us has a mask that ultimately we're dying to take off, then perhaps we could be a little bit more disarming to each other than we are. But, we've spoken in the past about reactivity and things like that in terms of our nervous systems, and our masks beget reactivity.
Well, they're as we've talked about them, they're a survival defense mechanism, and our reaction is that it's the fight or flight. Like, I'm being probed here, so I need to get in action. I mean, I just want to acknowledge what you said there about judgment, and it's like, if I think about, the majority of spiritual teachings, that they're sort of suggesting that, and I would even take it further and say, you know what? I don't think anyone is truly wanting to lie, to deceive, to manipulate, keep secrets. They are just trying to survive. 100%. And the more they do it, again, the more dis-ease that individual is feeling. And it's this automatic response they've likely gotten from their childhood. And it's interesting because this wearing of the mask to fit in, it's paradoxical because that mask is actually keeping us separate. Mm-hmm. We already all fit in. We're already connected by consciousness, our individuality, consciousness. We're actually all sort of this, we're all seeking unity and oneness. And then we head out in the world to demonstrate how separate and different and we can be in order to conform. It's quite interesting.
Well, and I think it feels anyways like it's the path of the human being, right? Of the soul in a human body to go through this experience of coming in as pure love, light, whatever energy, having to go through this place and the pain of separation, only to recognize the importance of belonging to self again and coming home.
That's the journey.
Yeah. Something you just said actually really struck me, and it takes me back to my late teens, early 20s. And I had an amazing roommate in Washington, D.C. when I was doing my master's in Chinese medicine. And she was a breath of fresh air for me, always, because she could laugh at herself all the time. And as I'm listening to you speak, I'm reminded of her because what happens as we begin to take off our masks is that we do start to laugh at ourselves. Mm-hmm. And this need that we have to wear them has us take ourselves really seriously. And I used to look at her in awe because I had this idea of who I was supposed to be and, all of these ways of being without knowing it, that were upholding that ideal of who I thought I was supposed to be. But I always looked at her with envy, I think, wishing that I could take myself as lightly as she could take herself. And I'm realizing now that she wasn't caught up in her secrets and her lies to herself. Yeah. She was free of them, actually.
Somewhat free of them. I would suggest, even sitting here now, there's those lies and secrets that we're in our conscious awareness.
100%.
And then there's those that are below the surface. And I think it's like, even you and I sitting here right now, we're caught in many things we're not even aware of. And, it becomes the work to look at it and see what are those things and unwind them and try to take the masks off. But
yeah,
that's what's interesting about it.
yeah. And just when you think that you've taken the masks off and you feel totally naked and honest and transparent, you realize that there's more to come.
Yeah. And then you laugh at yourself because you go look back and go, oh, how ridiculous it was. And I thought I'd got it to it all last year. So I think this, I'm going to say this statement. It sounds harsh, but we're using the words ego, mask, persona, secrets, and lies all sort of interchangeably. Is everybody lying to each other? Do we live in a world where just simply everybody's being conditioned to lie and everybody lies all the time? I know it's a provocative statement. I'm sort of starting at one end here.
Consciously, no. Unconsciously, probably.
Say more on that. Start with the consciously no.
I think a lot of this stuff is under the surface. I don't think that we're actually consciously aware of it. And to be honest with you, I think that if we were consciously aware of it, we wouldn't be able to digest ourselves. We wouldn't be able to actually be with ourselves if we knew that we were constantly experiencing some version of an inner battle. I think it's out of our conscious awareness. I would really say a lot of this is like a blind spot when you're driving. It's not something that you see. And it may be something that other people see and just love you for or tolerate you for. But it may be something that you're really good at even hiding from them.
Yeah. Or I'd add to it, they don't want to see. So they're lying to themselves about seeing it or not seeing it.
Sure.
Right. Because that would mean a change. If I was to recognize that person was lying, then I'd have to do something. So I'm going to lie to myself.
I'm having a hard time following that, but yes. And, I wonder if giving you an example is like,
I was about to ask.
Yeah. So I had this experience, I'm laughing in this process because you're asking me questions that who am I to answer, right? Like I have an answer according to me. I don't have the answer. And I fashion myself, somebody who wants to do her work and does her work. But every time we talk about the word evolution, I somehow want to talk about the word devolution because I think in some ways we're unwinding and returning rather than evolving and becoming. I don't know. But here I am, somebody who's done a lot of work, and I go to an appointment with a very, very powerful woman who is a breath worker, but she's a therapist. And we're sitting and having a conversation. And I'll never forget the feeling that I had in the session. I remember coming home to you and talking to you about it afterwards. She essentially looked at me and she said, "You are a seductress, and I don't want to be seduced by you." And she said it, and I got this feeling that was like, I don't know about you or all of you out there listening, but it one of those moments where I felt like somebody had sort of stuck a dagger in my heart and my heart dropped into my belly. And I couldn't defend myself, or I didn't want to defend myself because she had spoken truth, but I couldn't really digest what she had said. So I said, "Can you say more?" We ended up having this big conversation about it. And essentially what she was telling me was that I had learned how to weave a web so beautifully that not only was I able to seduce other people into believing what I was saying, but I had seduced myself into believing it. And what I realized in what she was saying was that behind that seduction, which was completely unconscious. It wasn't something that I was aware of consciously at all until she brought it forward. I was living in a place where my need to please, my need to be liked was so powerful that I was able to weave a web to seduce everybody around me to like me, I guess, on some level. And she really had me go into a way deeper place of examining my blind spots than I had ever been willing to do.
And you've had been at that point examining your blind spots. You've been already doing a tremendous amount of work.
I had.
Yeah.
And she was like, what she felt like, I almost just felt like my nose just went up. She almost felt like she took a sword and she cut through everything to cut straight to the truth. And, you know, if that had happened 6 months before, a year before, 2 years before, one, I would have defended myself. Two, I never would have gone back. Three, I would not have shared that information with you or anybody else. But I came back and I started sharing that information with my students. I started sharing that information in groups that I was running because it was true. And if I'm doing it, then my guess is that all of us are probably doing the same on some level, right? And those are the secrets and lies that we keep from ourselves, that when we do, we keep ourselves stuck from growing and from unwinding.
I want to sort of, I want to add to what you said, because I said something beautiful that you're sharing from, your experience, right? And I have my experience, and I want to come back to this. I'm thinking about it as we're talking here about the conscious versus the unconscious line. And as you know from other podcasts, I'm a person that's gone through addiction and recovery from addiction, and it's an interesting. I've gone through an interesting process when it comes to secrets, lies, and honesty, because I've gone to extreme places. Um, and I'm reflecting back to when I was, in addiction and it was building, and there was things that I was very unconscious of, but there was also, I would say, lies to protect the addiction about how much drinking there's been, where I've been, things like that, that were conscious, yet simultaneously watching my brain being a justifying machine to make sense of it all and continue to create a lie to myself that actually what I'm doing is okay. There's a reason for it. It's okay. People don't understand. Other people are doing it. It's what everybody's doing. Like all this happening. So aware that what I'm doing is by the end of my addiction cycle, I couldn't speak without lying. But in my mind, I'm still holding on to this premise that I'm an honest person. And I'm this beacon of honesty, yet everything I'm saying is a lie, until that whole thing fell apart. And that's where I get into this place of what's conscious, what's unconscious, or maybe that's not even the right way to look at it. What is the trap our mind puts us in?
I love that you just brought that up, because the conscious part of you that's choosing in that moment to lie is the part of you that's choosing to protect your addiction.
Correct. Right? Yeah.
The unconscious part is the part that is driving your addiction. So the conscious lie is to be practical and make sure that you can have your next drink.
Yeah.
The unconscious part is the feelings that are sitting underneath the surface, or underneath that iceberg, that actually then are driving everything that you're doing to protect the little boy that feels afraid of being abandoned, rejected, not enough, not worthy, etc. That's the unconscious part. Does that make sense?
Oh, I just got tingles up my spine. That was very profound. I don't think I've ever thought about it that way before. Yeah, absolutely. That's this unconscious part of me driving the bus to do this. And the conscious part of me is like, it may be even ego awareness. Okay, well, I've got to hold on to my job. I don't want to lose my family. I don't want to lose my friends. So lie, or else those will all go away if they see what you're doing.
Totally. And And, we have so much, we get to a place where we have so much judgment. We'll speak to addiction per se, anybody that's in addiction is lying inevitably.
100%. That's just to be clear, everybody, that's 100% true.
So, and we become so judgmental of the person struggling with addiction, but that substance abuse or misuse is no different than the person who's out running marathon after marathon after marathon, the person who is obsessively cleaning their house, the person
working 80 hours a week,
100%. All of those things, they're all doing the same thing. They're attempts to suppress our feelings that we don't know how to be with. And so, I think back to doing all of this prep work with clients as they were getting ready to leave the center and go back into their lives. And the biggest question that I had for them was, can you sit with and be with discomfort? Because if you can't, you're not free. You can't be free, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's probably a really great place for us to take a pause and come back to, because that's a big conversation to have. How's that sound?
Sounds great. Okay, see everybody in a minute. Welcome back, everybody. I think where we left off, Jacqueline, you were talking about feeling our discomfort. Can you expand a little bit more on what you mean by that in the context of today's topic?
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of work over the last little while with a process that we can talk about later. But ultimately, this process really keeps bringing us back to what's driving our behaviors, what's driving the reactivity specifically within our systems, and how to actually bring our system back down to a place of calm and quiet. And without fail, reactivity in our system is driven by unintegrated emotion. What that looks like is those places that we are unable to really look at, those blind spots, the discomfort that sits within our system that we haven't yet turned toward, but are constantly looking away from, running away from, suppressing, avoiding, is the very thing that once we turn toward it, actually creates a massive shift in our system. But in order to do that, requires a tremendous, I would say actually, it requires a tremendous amount of courage because it involves being able to, it involves being willing to shake the foundation that we've built our entire persona around. And it's tough work. It's hard work. But the truth is, in my belief, and in the belief of a lot of people that I really honor, I think it's really the only work. It's the work that ultimately leads to deep healing, and healing that happens when it happens. It's not healing that's years and years of therapy. It's healing that happens in a moment. It's the healing that when, people say to me often, like, you can't just flip a switch. And actually, if you do all of the work to get there, it is like the flip. It does
flip.
Yeah, 100%. It does flip. And it's not like it happens out of nowhere. It happens because there's a tipping point.
Yeah.
I wonder, I could talk about this forever, but I think it would be interesting if we were to shift the conversation a little bit into, in the work you do with people, I watch or I get to hear anyways, about flips switching. I get to hear about people learning how to be with discomfort and grow from there. Would you be willing to share with our audience some of the work that you do in this realm and what you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, fundamentally, the work relates directly to this topic that fundamentally we're all wearing masks. And fundamentally, that mask is the story we're telling ourselves in order to survive. And it's what it feels to internally keeps us safe. Whether it's working on the outside or not is a different story. But we're telling ourselves, and my clients are telling themselves that story because this is how they're surviving. It's all about survival. And when they come to do the work, something's going on in their lives where it's not working anymore, and it's enough that they want to change it, but they don't know how. And it comes down to that concept you said earlier. It was beautiful. It's courage, but even before courage comes willingness, and that willingness is important because it's like, wait a minute, I'm telling this story is a survival technique. Taking off any part of that story is uncomfortable. Because if it wasn't, you wouldn't have been telling yourself that story. So each and every layer of the mask or part of the mask or the thousands of masks that we're wearing to everybody, as soon as those start to come off, the discomfort kicks in. And many people at that stage, they'll pull back, they'll shy away. Some people will push forward. But where I've seen the most amount of success, it seems to be related to the amount of discomfort the external life has brought to that person before they begin to this work. It's right. It's like this, we've called it before, this gift of desperation. If things have gotten bad enough in their lives that it's falling apart, then the willingness goes up exponentially. And then the courage will show up over time because the discomfort may be worth it because they're already in so much discomfort from the mask they're wearing. As they take it off, it doesn't create a tremendous amount more.
It reminds me, when you're speaking, you're reminding me of one of my teachers who used to always speak from a different perspective about energy. And he would say, you need to gather enough energy in order to be able to create change. So this much energy isn't going to create this much change. You have to gather, which actually looks like gathering discomfort, friction, frustration,
Right.
upset,
Yeah.
until you can then create that tipping point and move forward.
Yeah.
Which you speak to as the gift of desperation.
Yeah. And then there's another aspect to it, which seems to be related, is this: there has to be something to trust in a sense, right? Because again, this mask, it's survival, it's fear-based, and there needs to be some level of trust that if I take it off, I'm going to be okay. Because everything my ego is screaming at me, don't take it off. You won't survive. You're going to be excluded from the tribe. Something bad will happen. Keep it on. So in this in-between period where we're basically like, I'm taking it off and I have no idea who I am now, there needs to be something to trust. And often people that have found, spirituality, religion, or trust in a higher power, that bridges the gap to say, okay, I can let go of who I think I am for this period to find out who I actually am. And that willingness and that trust, and then the courage starts showing up at that stage. But that seems to be the process that works for people that have been successful.
Can I pop in for a sec?
Please.
So I think that for some of us, talking about faith, a higher power, believing in something bigger than myself, in God, in the divine, in nature, in the universe, works. But I think there's probably a lot of you out there that doesn't necessarily work for. And both you and I are doing a tremendous amount of group work. And you particularly with men, and me mostly with women. And one of the experiences, or I can speak for myself, but I know that, and you can speak for yourself, the truth, but it crosses the board, is that as we do this work, one of the most beautiful gifts that we have is to be able to see our reflections in each other. And as I take my mask off and I'm consciously doing work it's really nice to be surrounded by people who are receiving me, seeing me, and acknowledging me in that process. And I say that because this kind of transformation, we spoke a little bit about the caterpillar last time, but it's like truly, you spend your life as a caterpillar and you gather and you gather and you gather and you gather, you get nice and big until your skin becomes so uncomfortable. The lies, the secrets, the masks become so uncomfortable that you can't wear them anymore. And you dissolve into gobbledygook.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what this process feels like. It feels like you go from being a person of value and significance and importance and blah, blah, blah. And you have all these accolades and achievements and you turn into gobbledygook.
And what caterpillar in the right mind thinks that looks like a good idea?
None.
Yeah, right.
And what caterpillar in their right mind, when they become gobbledygook, has any idea that they've entered the alchemical process of becoming a butterfly?
It's the best example.
Yeah. Truly.
Yeah.
But when I'm doing that work and I feel like gobbledygook or like, a mop on the floor, and the reflection I get back from you or from one of the women that I'm facilitating in groups, or you get from one of the men that you're working with, or they get from each other, is I see you and wow, do I see you? And not only do I see you, but you've just created an invitation for me to step in and unveil and show you myself. I don't think there's anything more powerful. And that's like this process of we long to belong so badly, but what we're really longing to belong to is ourselves. And it's kind of a paradox because I think we do need each other to come back to this place where in our reflections to each other, we remind ourselves that we do belong to ourselves and it's okay.
Yeah, I've heard this realm described as an escape room where we're all here to help each other take our masks off, so we can realize, oh, we're all just one of the same thing anyway. So then the game's over.
Yeah.
But in that's really reminds me of like there's again in recovery language they use this what we do to help others. It's simple: experience, strength, and hope. And the main starting point is just simply experience. You sit down with the other man or woman and you tell them your story, and in such a way that you just completely open yourself. Like, you're presenting a story that individual will look at. There's like shame and guilt, and you should like all these things, but you're just the spirit. Hey, this is what happened to me. This is what I went through, but here I am now, and I've come out the other side of it. And whether it's with someone in addiction, whether it's just a client, another human being, a friend, when I tell a story about myself without holding anything back, without keeping any known secrets from it, that magically just completely disarms the other person. It opens them up, and they can start talking about themselves, probably for the very first time, about the masks they've been wearing, the secrets they've told people, the things that they don't think anybody knows or ever knows. All of a sudden, they'll start talking about it because why? They feel safe now. They feel they're not going to be judged. They're not going to be excluded. They're not going to be pushed up. This person is going to understand me. And that can happen in an individual setting or can happen in a group setting. But as you said, it creates that, you're alluding to, it creates that feeling of trust and belonging within even the small group. So this work could happen. So this becomes the cocoon in your analogy.
And it's, really from what I've seen, it's the gift of what fellowships offer.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's like, I would even go further. I think it's the gift of what a human being can offer. Like so I've been, we both have pursuit in psychology and for coaching and spirituality. And in my own path, I've chosen not to take any of the credentials of being registered clinical counselor. I'm not choosing to be an accredited coach. I'm not choosing these things because these things, in my mind, all put restrictions on me being human to people, such as big self-disclosure. I'm full of self-disclosure. my process has a tremendous amount of self-disclosure in it because I actually think my self-disclosure and me being open is the best way to heal a fellow human being. Like it's me opening my heart and showing them unconditional love through my full surrender is the best way to help and heal someone who wants to take their masks off.
I couldn't agree with you more. And, I got all the credentials and then gave them all up
Mhm.
for the very same reason. And I don't think there is any greater gift than our own transparency in being with people. And, you said something about whether it's with an individual working one on one or it's in a group. And, you know, I think both scenarios deliver a tremendous amount of, can create the potential for a tremendous amount of healing to happen. One, the individual work, I don't know, there's something about the individual work that almost allows us to go back and receive in the way that we didn't receive as
Mm.
children. And with
Mhm.
one person who sees us and reflects us back to us, secrets exposed, blind spots exposed, and were received unconditionally. That's sort of, in many ways, I think that that's what Carl Rogers' work was all about, was just unconditional positive regard, which is,
Yeah, right.
I'm present and I'm here with you. But I think that the group work that we do is even more powerful in some way because it's not about one person that we're paying to reflect us back to us, but it actually becomes about this awareness. And it's like this expansive awareness that, oh my God, we're we're all just, it's like Rumi's words, we're all just walking each other
Yeah.
home. We're all the same.
We're all wearing masks. We're all, yeah.
And when we take off our masks,
Yeah.
we all feel shaky.
Yeah.
We all feel exposed. But when we're doing it together, somehow it creates this, the group creates a container that allows us to contain our experience more effectively.
Mm.
It allows us to embody our brokenness with our wholeness, the places where we feel fractured with the places that we feel together. And all of a sudden, it's like all of me is welcome here. And I don't know how all of me fits back together because I've become gobbledygook, but I know that all of the parts of me belong. And now my job is to figure out what that actually looks like and feels like.
So I think that's a great segue because we established there's this, okay, the group's making us feel safe. It's making us feel seen. But I think, both really, now there's some work to be done to go the rest of the way. So what does the work look like to you? Where would people want? So maybe for our listeners, they're feeling called to this. They want to start taking off the mask. They found a group or someone that sees them. They want to start doing the work. What's the work that they need to do?
Mm-hmm. It's a really good question. And before I answer it, I want to just take a step back to what you just said, which is the group's a great starting point. I don't know, the group could be a great middle point or end point or all along the journey point. It's just the presence of a group or of being a part of is the opportunity to be seen and to become. And it can be there always. But along that way, we are, without question, we have people with us all the time. We are supported on some level, always, whether it's by the people in our lives or by the energy around us. But we have our own work to do in this lifetime, and nobody can do it for us. Nobody can take our pain away, other than maybe momentarily. Nobody can feel what it feels like to be me. Only I can do that.
Only you know that.
Yeah. And so, in my estimation, the work looks like learning how to be with parts of ourselves that are uncomfortable. And, in the last few years, I've been exposed to so many things for so many years and a lot of teachings. And I've tried on a lot of different hats. And a lot of them have really good, there's pieces of everything that seem to work beautifully. And I've pulled from a lot of them. But the work that I keep coming back to over the last couple of years is Michael Brown's presence process. It's a book. It doesn't require any monetary, other than buying the book. You're not required to be anywhere. You're not required to fly anywhere. You're not required to pay extra money to do X, Y, or Z. There's no trap in any of it. Mm-hmm. His work is a 10-week program that you do on your own. And actually, he advises that we do it without a group. I disagree. The work is ours to do, but doing it within the container of a group seems to make a really big difference. And that whole piece of work can really be boiled down to whatever creates a reaction in us means that there is an unintegrated piece or a place within me that I have not turned toward or looked at that likely comes from childhood that needs to be met. And it doesn't mean that I need to go revisit my trauma. It doesn't mean that I need to relive it. It doesn't even mean that I need to understand it. It just means that I need to learn how to feel it. And that is work that, well, it's driving my work right now, actually, with my groups.
And it's called the presence process, right?
Yeah, it's called the presence process by Michael Brown. And I've been running groups and will continue to run groups in May when we get back from our trip to Africa. It's an incredible process, and I would encourage you to take a look at it because I think that he really creates a really beautiful path. He demonstrates a path for healing that is actually, it's not a path for healing, because he would say there's nothing wrong with you in the first place to heal. It's a path for feeling. And when I go back to my work in addictions, I would say it's a path to learning how to be with the very things that make us so uncomfortable that we will do anything and everything to avoid, which will lead us down paths that will become far more dangerous and hurtful than the path of actually learning how to be with our discomfort. And I can tell you that after many years of doing this kind of work, I'm still in it. I'm still learning. Where would you take this work?
And it's interesting because I can't contrast it to the presence process because I've never done the presence process or read the book. So to give you an idea of, we have our different processes, and I'm planning to do the presence process shortly, but I don't know it. So I'm just going to speak with what I do know. And I think I characterize the work that I've certainly done on myself and I take the majority of the people I work with through. I'll just call it shadow work, which is this all-encompassing, term out there. But what I mean by it is it's really trying to understand the rejected parts of us. And that just doesn't mean the parts that other people are rejected, but it's the parts of us that we've rejected. It's that subconscious mask we're wearing that comes out in times of reactivity and it leads to a tremendous amount of our dishonesty. And how I, generally have gotten at it, it's almost like this inventorying process. Because our mask, our ego, our persona, it's a trickster. It wants to hide this thing from us. It hides it to us because it doesn't want us to see it, because it wants it to operate below the surface because it's pretty sure we'll reject it. And what we do is we look at different ways in how we act, call it our character attributes. What are some of the very positive ways we tend to act, and what are some of the very less positive ways, defective ways we tend to act that would include lying or manipulation or sort of types of people pleasing or control. And as we start mapping that out, exploring it and writing on it and looking at it closely, all of a sudden a better picture of who we are, a better picture of the avatar we're playing starts to emerge. Oh, I'm seeing these good parts of me, but I'm seeing these parts of me. whoa, when did these things start? What did I get from it as a kid? How is it serving me now? Okay. And then digging deeper, what's the fear that this has been reactive to? Oh my gosh, I have a fear of abandonment. I have a fear of not being loved. I have a fear of not belonging. What's the limiting belief structure that resides below that? And as we keep exploring and digging down through this type of shadow work, and very similar to Jacqueline, it's not about reliving traumas. It's just about trying to understand, how do I operate today? I am playing a character in this world, and I'm unaware of big parts of it. And as we start doing this work, we start to become fully aware of, this is the person, this is the persona that I've taken on. And it really is a function of my upbringing, my conditioning. And with that awareness, I can choose to play a different character in my life. I can choose that to be something different. And that's sort of the work I'm involved in.
I love it, because ultimately we're actually, you think about the chakra system and the first three chakras, and then there's the heart, and then there's the top three chakras. And you really are doing, you're doing a top-down approach to get to the same place. And the approach that I'm speaking to is much more of a bottom-up approach, which really just speaks to the differences between you and I and how we operate. But they're the same process.
Right.
You mentioned the avatar, which just leads me back, because you always use this quote by Jim Carrey, right?
Right.
About the avatar. And I wonder if you can share it, because it really strikes a chord with me every time you speak it.
Yeah, I think it goes something like this. The depression is your mind telling you it's tired of being the character you're trying to play. And it's real stuff. I mean, that's, I didn't finish it. It's real. Like
depression is your mind
telling you it's tired of being the character you're trying to play.
So essentially, if I was to come back to our original conversation and how we started this, what Jim Carrey is saying, which rings really true, and that sends shivers up my back, is depression, and I'll add into that your midlife crisis, your health crises,
addiction,
all kinds
alcoholism,
all of that,
100%.
Are really your body's way or your mind's way of telling you that the roles that you've been playing in your life, the secrets that you've been keeping, the lies that you've been telling yourself, the caterpillar skin, it needs to be shed. It doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, and I would add physical elements to that 100%. Too. I think we talked about this in one of our very first podcasts about the body's message to us through all of these things. It's tired of the character you're trying to play. Understand it at least.
And so our work really ultimately comes down to learning how, rather than to mute and suppress the discomfort that our body mind expresses, learning how to be with that discomfort and go into a deep exploration of what it means to be with it, so that we can move from lying to ourselves to radically accepting ourselves, and through that, radically accepting the people around us.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's I'll close with this. Almost where we started, everybody's wearing a mask. It's our egos, it's a survival mechanisms. Some are bigger, some are smaller, some are taking us much farther away from the true individuated consciousness that we actually are. But everyone has this mask, a way to survive the childhood. It's not meant to be judged. It's very much part of the human condition. And there's one of my spiritual teachers, Ram Dass, who's no longer with us, just has a real simple saying that he got from his teacher: love everybody, tell the truth. So I'm going to love everybody through their mask, because I recognize they didn't choose it. I can see them, maybe if they can't see themselves. And the more I can tell the truth, the more I'll help that person take their mask off. So I'm going to choose to love everybody and tell the truth as my way of being in life.
That's beautiful. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, and we'll see you next time. You've been listening to me, Chris.
And me, Jacqueline, on Break Free and Trust, a redesign for living.
Tune in every second and fourth Monday at 3 p.m. on Transformation Talk Radio for more real conversations about life, death, and everything in between.
Learn to connect with your intrinsic power to grow and heal, how to laugh at your own humanness and not take life too seriously.
Through healthy conversations between the feminine and the masculine, you will learn how to harness the power of relationship and the mirror to befriend your shadow, and to trust that any obstacle that gets in your way is there to help you grow.
For more information or to connect with us personally, visit theway-healing.com. That's theway-healing.com.